Over a month ago, Delta signed a letter of intent with the Treasury Department to access a piece of about $30 billion in loans to fund your operations. Have you received any of that money?
We have not, Kayla. This was the second tranche of the original CARES Act. We've not made the decision whether we're going to access that loan or not yet. We still have a few weeks to make that decision.
So the group of Republican senators that's pushing for another $25 billion in payroll support, that would essentially be free money. That would be a grant program. But I know a lot of critics are saying, why should the airline industry specifically receive more aid if it hasn't exhausted all options available to it? Do you think that airlines should get more help from Washington if the industry hasn't tapped these loans yet?
Well, first, it wouldn't be free grant. As the first grant was, it was 70% grant, 30% loan. And so if there was an extension, it would be a 30% loan is my expectation, along with warrants that would go back to the government as well. The first grant was incredibly successful. It enabled the industry to keep the 750,000 workers employed through the face of the worst of the pandemic for the first 6 months, gave us a chance to understand with what we're dealing with, and then have an orderly plan to go forward with. And as a result of that, the pandemic is not yet where we thought it would be at this point in time. So yes, I think it makes sense if the government was to continue to extend this. This is money that's going to our workers to keep the workers on the payroll. The alternative will be you will find tens of thousands of employees across the industry that will be furloughed effective October 1st.
Ed, I guess no one can argue that it's been successful in the short term and obviously stopped you from making more layoffs than you otherwise would. I think inherent in Kayla's question was whether or not it's unfair on all sorts of other sectors that haven't received the same benefit. And I guess my question is, do you feel uncomfortable when you look at retailers, for example, that may well have done less buybacks than you in the years earlier, that may well have been less indebted than you in the years earlier, and they still are not getting the same level of government assistance? Do you feel that's been quite unfair on other sectors?
I can't evaluate the different sectors. That's the role of government to decide which sector they want to prioritize and where the funds will be deployed. The airline industry, we know, is essential to the recovery, to opening the economy back up in a safe way, and not just in the U.S., on an international scale as well. Delta was in great financial position prior to the pandemic. We had got our investment grade rating back. We'd paid down our debt. Yes, the industry was buying back shares, but at Delta, it was a very small percentage of the overall cash that we were generating. So we were very responsible stewards of cash. I don't know how you can build a big enough safety net for a pandemic that comes once in a century, but I do think it's logical for the government to consider the extension.
Well, I think that's fair, that certainly relative to your own history and relative to a couple of the other airlines, that your level of indebtedness had improved. 48%, I think, of your market capitalization at the end of 2019. But that's not low in absolute terms. And similar argument would apply, I think, to your buybacks from 2015 to 2019. $13 billion was returned to shareholders, $10 million in buybacks, $3 billion in dividends. Just this year, you've raised $21 billion, just over that. Over half of that was directly from the market. So putting aside even the government aid, do you regret doing any single dollar of those buybacks over the prior 5 years, given that you've had to fundraise at a share price significantly lower than you bought back stock at over the prior 5 years?
Wilford, it's great to be a Monday morning quarterback with the benefit of a pandemic in hindsight. The reality is, over the last decade, Delta generated $100 billion of operating cash, and the amount of buybacks were less than 20% of $100 billion. So the vast majority of the money that we invested went back into the business to improve the quality of the experience for our customers, to pay profit sharing to our employees, and to get our debt levels down to the point where we did get our investment grade rating back.